Welcome to Business Innovators Radio, featuring industry influencers and trendsetters sharing proven strategies to help you build a better life right now.
This is Alicia DeBrell from Insight Media. Today I get the privilege to interview Greg Glander. He teaches business owners who are growing their business how to overcome blocks and challenges with productivity so that they can take inspired action to reach their full potential. His current coaching program, Belief, Ability, and Outcome Mastery Blueprint, is a new systemized program created to help clarify your ultimate goals, put effective strategies into action, upgrade your skills and knowledge, and master your psychology. So without further ado, I want to welcome Greg Glander to the show. Hi, Greg. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Alicia. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
This is going to be a great interview. So let's get into it. Can you tell me a little bit about yourself and where you're from?
Well, to start off, I'm a life coach and business development consultant. My background is in NLP, or what's called neuro-linguistic programming. I also have a background with studies in neuroscience and quantum science. In fact, just as a side note on quantum science, I'm so into that, and I'm one who, the more bizarre and mind-twisting it gets, the more I love it. I don't know why. I never really even imagined, myself getting into science of any kind back in my school days, but I'm just a guy who, among other things, I love delving into how the mind works, what produces peak performance, and why do people have certain traits and behaviors that they do? And I really wanted answers, as to how can we actually create a life that we actually do want. But I've also been a business and success-minded person, and I always looked at the differences in what successful people do or how they think versus people who don't succeed. And interestingly enough, I found it comes down to a simple question, and that would be, who does one have to be, with the emphasis on be, in order to do what they have to do to reach their goals or, achieve the success and abundance that they're shooting for?
And tell me, who do you help and how do you help them?
Well, currently I work with people on a twofold basis. I work with them to break through limiting blocks or beliefs and habits, such as fear of failure, uncertainty, anxieties, procrastination. I mean, that's a mighty common one, right? But I also merge that with people wanting to start their own business ventures, but they need to help with their inner game, like I just mentioned, as well as development with, say, their goods or service ideas. And also, particularly, I teach a real big one, and that's productivity strategies. I've done a lot of research and reading and compiling methods and strategies for productivity and time management, and I've come down to a few major strategies that I've worked out and kind of put myself through that I find that are truly effective. So what I teach is not just more, run-of-the-mill stuff. I mean, this comes from real successful business leaders and the high achievers. So I would say basically where I come in for the entrepreneurial half is really with elements of clarifying their ultimate vision, the productivity and time management, establishing a roadmap of what I call achievable action steps, and then teaching like core business principles and mindset.
And what made you want to get into this field? What made you want to be a coach?
Ultimately, I think that came about as a result of my personal background of many inner challenges and limitations that I lived with before. In fact, in my story, I always like to say the Greg who is speaking to you now is definitely not the same person as what I call a past Greg. I mean, I really spent some years studying in, the human potential fields and seeking answers and solutions. And in more recent years, I dove into NLP and neuroscience and other fields of study. And after implementing what I was learning, and I was making some real strides and making some real positive change, which, by the way, that was a real conscious effort. I don't think people truly understand that they have to go into to really make the change. That was a real conscious effort. But along the way, I started realizing that I was getting knowledge and skills where I could really be of value to other people who were having the same challenges and who were really wanting to break out of those. And as I mentioned, I love learning how the mind works, discovering how we can start to what I call unlearn the more socially programmed ways of operating. It's really about beginning to direct our paths in life much more purposefully. And that included a success mindset. I remember from a young age, I was always looking at the world of success and prosperity. And I don't know if you remember, actually, Alicia, I used to watch that show Robin Leach on Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous. I don't know if you remember that. But so it's like, for example, now I watch shows like Shark Tank and Billion Dollar Buyer and Secret Lives of the Super Rich. But all of that, that's how I came to be doing what really has been a real passion for me. And I'm very fortunate to be able to teach and, work with others. But, at the same time, with all that being within the areas that I just absolutely love and I'm totally fascinated by. I'm really fortunate in that respect.
And so what do you think as a coach, what is your role?
First, off the top, what I provide initially is a situation where people are free to fully express what they feel their challenges are. Because it's not really too often when one gets to, say, talk at length about themselves in a normal conversation. What I mean is, many times the other person will have a tendency to jump in, and they'll say things like, oh, yeah, that happens to me too. Or they'll jump in with, oh, I'm the same way when it comes to that, blah, blah, blah. But what just happened? They interjected and they ran away more or less with the conversation, and it went in a completely different track. So, just providing the space for someone to just talk and have someone to actively versus passively listen to them in itself is invaluable. Not to mention someone who has knowledge and skills to effectively help them. But I also act as part teacher, part accountability partner. I facilitate a transformation process, and I provide the guidance and knowledge for them to reach their personal and professional goals.
Are there some typical reasons why somebody hires or wants to work with a coach?
Often people, I think, will first acknowledge, just right off the bat, that they have some particular limitation that keeps them from doing something, that they either want or need to do. It could be where, maybe they hate their current situation and they realize that they have so much more to do, or give out to the world. They're so tired and frustrated, with just living in what I call mediocrity. Or it could be, their back is to the wall and they have to make something happen. So what happens is they'll take some, initial action by seeking a way to, break through a fear or a negative habit or belief system. Or they need to find a way to another path. They're looking for solutions. So what they do is they'll reach out to a trained coach to help them with that. Another big reason that I found personally is that, people want the guidance along the way to reaching some, big outcome that they've set for themselves. And especially when, let's say, they're breaking out for the first time with something, they need someone to teach them, a mindset, maybe some business principles to give them direction. I would also say, especially these days, when employment has been such a totally, different ball game than just maybe so many years ago. I find that there are a lot of people that are realizing the importance of turning to a more entrepreneurial route and giving themselves, more possibilities, specifically, with their financial security. And what I think is just great, this is what I'm seeing, is that they're also finding something that they can really get behind, something that they really know, or it's a passion, or it's an interest, or something they have some skills or knowledge in. And they're entering now into another path that is so much more purposefully driven. And I give them a lot of credit for that.
So you mentioned hurdles a little bit. Can you give me some examples of which hurdles you find that your clients have in common?
In common, sure. There have been clients that have had specific fear of failure that has seemed to be kind of a common thread with not all, but a lot of the people that I've worked with. Fear of failure, I would say, and a common thread within that was that it stemmed from a particular past experience. They started some venture, but some negative event with a particular person, say a vendor happened, or things went a certain way, and they took it as a failure. But the important thing for them, though, is that what they first thought of as failure was really a huge learning experience that we turned around to a new opportunity. I mean, I had them look at the person or event from different angles with many possibilities until eventually, they learned the distinctions that enabled them to, be more prepared the next time around. And one thing that I took them through what's called reframing. And a crucial element within that was that it addressed the, that emotional grip that came with those memories and that sense of failure.
Can you clear up what are one or two popular misconceptions about the product or service that you provide and the results it produces?
For me personally, that has to do with an overall bias against looking into, say, one's limiting habits, one's limiting psychology and habitual mental paradigm. And I think it has to do with our basic culture here in the Western world. People are trained and taught primarily to, react to whatever is happening in their outside world, versus, designing a life consciously and purposefully. In our society, we're so ingrained with the notion that the mind has nothing to do with how we operate in life. And it's really, unfortunate that social programming dictates that, working with mind and changing one's habitual self is just fluff, or what's called the soft stuff. But I can tell you, Alicia, I've learned from so many different sources over the years in my personal journey of study and experience that, everything, and I mean everything, first starts with the mind, good or bad. That brings to mind, just real quickly, if I could give an example of that misconception in our culture. There was a guy, I remember, he messaged me through LinkedIn, and he reached out to ask what would be a few good resources or books on NLP for him to get into. He said, he was really interested in NLP, what it does, what's the premise, how does it work, and he kind of wanted to get involved and learn more about that. But he also mentioned telling that interest of his to some of his cycling buddies. I guess there was a group of them that they go cycling in the mornings and on the weekend. And what he told me in the message was that he said that they laugh and they really give him a hard time with that, saying things like, oh, it's just all that, quote, pop psychology crap. So that would be just as one illustration of that. But, I firmly believe that the way to living a happy, healthy, fulfilling, and purposeful life is really all about switching from, living from the outside in to working from the inside out. In fact, I know it is.
How long do you typically work with your clients? Is there a set time? How does that work?
In order to, really enable a timeline where the client starts to get some traction with their goals, I typically go with a 6-month minimum. Many times people will go with like a 12-month initial type of coaching program. Ideally, especially with entrepreneurial goals, 12 months gives the breadth of time to start getting some real momentum and actually start reaching some goals. And when someone does that, when they find themselves reaching the milestones and reaching some places that they mapped out that they wanted to experience, accomplishing or reaching, I can't tell you what a boost to them emotionally and their state and their sense of confidence gives. So again, typically I'll go with like a 6-month minimum. Many times people will just start right off with 12 months.
So this brings me also to my next question, which is, so during the 6 or 12-month period, how is the coaching delivered, and what does that process look like?
Well, the first thing right off the bat is for the client to register for a free strategy call. The register part of that is just like a questionnaire application. So I can get an initial idea of who the person is and what their biggest challenge is. But it also, that enables me to do a quick assessment of whether it's going to be a good fit for both of us or not. Because I can only work with so many clients, at least on a one-on-one basis, unless I set up maybe a group coaching scenario. It's crucial, really, that I see the people who are, truly committed to themselves and the process and reaching their personal, professional goals. Because many times there are people I found who are just looking to take a peek into something. They aren't genuinely, wanting to reach for goals and make change. And like in the marketing world, pretty much they're called tire kickers. But during the call, we'll discuss, their biggest challenges and where they are now and how we'll build that bridge to where they want to get to. Then once the person enrolls in the program, we start really an exciting and inspiring journey. I would also add that I typically meet with clients on Skype video or even by phone. So I work with people not only locally, but I've worked with people, across the country, as well as up in Canada.
Nice. Right. Yeah, I guess you could pretty much help anybody in the world with your services.
Hey, the magic of internet, right?
I know. Things have come a long way. So how do you solve their problem? And why would they want to become your customer? Why would they want you as their coach?
Well, depending on what they're coming in with, I take them through, specific techniques, some exploratory questions, and we get to the core triggers, really, of, whatever anxiety or habit or fear or programmed beliefs. And in the process, we turn those things around, so the client can actually start forming new habits, new behaviors, and new ways of being. If we're working on their entrepreneurial goals, then we start laying down what I call actionable or achievable steps. When we establish their business plan, we go into the vision for the venture. We get into the productivity method again so that they can really put themselves on a real path to getting to the milestones that we set and reaching those.
So how is it measured? How is the process measured? How do you know it's working?
In this type of coaching, really, what matters is the client engaging in an activity or event, where they once had blocks that kept them stuck, but now are able to, move forth with more purpose and certainty. The thing I want to see is a change in the way they perceive something, how they feel about it. I look for the client to form new habits and thought patterns, more empowering inner dialogue, and I want to see them making the strides and getting the more impactful action steps accomplished. And then when they accomplish that, they see for themselves how they're gaining so much more momentum towards the goals or their outcome than they used to.
So, what are a few practices that somebody can immediately implement to begin to overcome some of those hurdles?
A big way that I could point out really on this call would be to what I call change one's story, meaning first develop the habit of noticing whenever that inner voice says things like, I'll never achieve that, or I am depressed, I am broke. Who am I to do this or that? You get the idea. So what you want to do is start breaking that habit, start interrupting that mental pattern because one is fixated. They're keeping themselves in that place of who or where they currently are. What happens is after so long of continuing that thought or those beliefs, that neural net, people start to form those beliefs or that inner dialogue as their identity, their anxieties, their stress. They make all of that, or their current situation, they make that their identity. It just simply is something that becomes a formed, automatic, and pre-wired mental habit. So my advice is always to first notice that dialogue going on. And when you do, you immediately stop. And you want to turn those around to thoughts that put you on a completely different track. And a great way that I do that is with questions. I'm a firm believer that questions are the answer. So you immediately want to change up, with how can I come up with money? How could I start doing this or that? Who do I know that could help me? Or what resources would I need to do this or that, and so forth. So I would say, employing the right questions not only breaks the pattern, but it also quickly puts one on a different path. And that alone will also put one in a completely different emotional state. So that would be a huge place to start. Change your story.
Okay, so then if you had just one piece of advice to give somebody that's looking to take their business to the next level, what would that be?
Quite a few things. A couple things immediately come to mind just off the top. One would be the importance of systemizing and automating their business as much as possible. Especially when one is planning the exit strategy, that last component of the business plan. When the time comes, for example, down the road, should they decide to cash out and sell, whatever other company is looking at their business or will be looking at their business, they're going to want to see, what systems do they have in place. Now, in terms of, systems in the context of business here, what I mean is an established and repeatable process. So, what established and repeatable process do they have to, say, deliver their products or services? Do they have a repeatable and ongoing process for their marketing? What systems do they have to provide customer service, and so on and so forth? So, systemizing would be one major thing. I would also add another one that is vital, and that would be, is the business scalable, especially in terms of, taking the business to the next level. So what I mean scalable, what I mean is, can they expand their product line? Can they duplicate themselves by way of, training others to do what they do? Maybe scaling up their manufacturing or their distributorship of their products as they grow. But also, let's say that one is just a one-man show right now. Say it's, you're a coach, you're an agent, or you're a consultant, and right now, it's just you. Well, how you can expand then is, maybe doing some group coaching or creating some form of, say, training course or service and deliver that as an online product or service. That would get wider market reach simply by being on the internet. So scalability would be another one, and that is key to getting to that next level.
I totally agree, completely. And it's important because, if you're only one person, you can only do so much.
Right. So duplication is the name of the game there.
So what do you think sets you aside from other coaches in your industry?
Well, one thing would be so much of coaching out there is geared to one thing or the other, either the inner game stuff or it's specifically the physical doing type stuff. So, what you'll find mainly out there are either life coaches or business coaches as two major categories. I mean, unless you're spending, tens of thousands of dollars, joining Tony Robbins retreats and his mastermind groups, or if you go to, say, a T. Harv Eker seminar, where they do address, both halves of the coin. A lot of the industry, though, works one side or the other. But what I do is I combine working at the inner challenges with the outer game. And again, one major thing that I address is effective productivity strategies. Another major difference is that, I really wanted to come up with a way to provide so much more value to people with, what I've learned, my skills, and what I teach them, other than what just a set of coaching calls can provide. So what kind of came about as a result of that was I created a systemized program. It has 5 crucial topics or areas built in, and it's called Belief, Ability, and Outcome Mastery Blueprint. And in that, I've created done-for-you templates and checklists, PDFs, and I've recorded and produced various audio MP3s. And these extra elements are really crucial in that they augment what I'm teaching or working with the client on. And the MP3s themselves can act as, mini sessions that the client can just plug in their earphones or earbuds or whatever and listen to them however much they want. And let me say, this is really unique because the typical coaching model, say, especially like in life coaching, the client will have X amount of coaching calls and they're like an hour or maybe they'll go 2 hours. And that's basically it. Nothing really for the client to work with during the rest of the week. Lastly, I would say a critical thing here that I always emphasize is that by combining both, winning at their inner game as well as their outer game of productivity and really surging ahead, by getting the important things accomplished, it really provides a way for the client to really jump out of the gate on a much more powerful footing towards their goals rather than just, addressing one half of the equation. And I might add, there is a caveat when I work with clients, and that is, let's make this fun. I always say, don't take yourself and everything so seriously. That's a trap that a lot of people fall into. I mean, this is your life we're designing here. It should be fun and exciting and inspiring, right?
Definitely. So one more question for you. If somebody wanted to get a hold of you for your services, how would they go about doing that?
Well, the first thing they could do is go to a website. It's gregglandercoaching.com. As they go through that and they scroll down at the bottom, there'll be a link that takes them to that application. Also, that page has a video that they can see. It's a short video, 3 essential takeaways to accomplish your personal and professional goals. Very informative. And also, one can always just, simply email me if they have questions or want to, set time to talk more about it. And that's Greg@gregglandercoaching.com.
Thank you for your time today. This was a great interview.
Well, thank you very much for having me on. I had a blast, and like I said, I could go on and on. I love talking about this stuff. So thank you very much for the opportunity.
No, I can tell you have a huge passion for helping others, and I think that's awesome. And the information you gave was very valuable, and I really appreciate it. All right, guys, you just heard from Greg Glander, and this is your host, Alicia DeBrell from Insight Media. Until next time.
Thanks for listening to Business Innovators Radio. To hear all episodes featuring leading industry influencers and trendsetters, visit us online at businessinnovatorsradio.com today.